Welcome back to r/LegalAdvice, where we read surprisingly interesting stories that usually don't end in a cliffhanger. If you are new to my channel, please feel free to subscribe to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right in. And the first one is titled, "Can I marry my potential stepsister?" About 4 months ago, I proposed to my girlfriend. We had been dating for several years and she accepted. We started planning for our wedding soon after and sent out invitations a couple weeks ago. Me and my mother don't get along and I went no contact with her a year ago, but today she called me and told me that we could not get married. I asked why, and she said she is dating my girlfriend's father and that once they got married we would have to separate since incest is illegal and she would be my stepsister. I asked my girlfriend when she got home and she asked her father. It turns out that they have been dating for almost a year now, and although he has known me for several years, he did not realize he was dating my mother because my mother has the last name of her most recent husband. She's been married 5 times. I was fathered by her second husband. He showed my mother the wedding invitation and I guess she decided to break the news to me before him. My girlfriend and I love each other and we both want to stay together, but we are worried there might be a shotgun wedding to prevent us from getting married. My potential stepfather has said he will have to collect his feelings to figure out how to approach this. He said he wasn't planning on proposing anytime soon, but we are worried my mother might pressure him into this to try and spite me now that she knows about his daughter and I hope that he breaks up with her, but if they are indeed a match, it is a horrible thought to want them to be separated. If our parents get married first, will we be unable to? Would there be any consequences if we were to have children without getting married if we are step-siblings? If we were to marry first, would it still be fine for our parents to marry later on? Should we just go to wherever they do marriage licenses and get married now, but still do the ceremony in a few months as originally planned? Or are we doomed to be forcibly separated regardless? Edit, I'm in New York, sorry. Edit again, thank you guys so much for the advice. We are so happy that we don't have to worry about this anymore, but getting married at the courthouse or wherever they do marriage licenses before then is likely what we will do for peace of mind. And seeing as our 4th year anniversary is coming up next week, we will probably do it then. So, people in the comments suggested, there is no law against marrying a step-sibling, it is not a blood relative relationship. See this, it is not incest, so there's no legal, moral or biological problem with marrying. It is similar to a sister marrying a brother-in-law, just because the words sister and brother are used to describe a relationship by marriage, that doesn't make it illegal or even wrong. If you ask me, that's definitely sort of a weird situation, but I guess if it's not legally or morally wrong, then why not? I guess whatever floats your boat, but definitely nothing for me. Let me know your thoughts about this situation in the comments. And now we will read an update to the stepsister story. So, it has been a wild week. I would have posted this sooner, but I was spending Thanksgiving with my now wife and her father. We got married this week with my now father-in-law as witness, and my father-in-law has now separated from my mother after learning what an insane, manipulative piece of crap she was. With this weight lifted from our shoulders, we are the typical honeymoon phase lovebirds you would expect, except we have not even had our honeymoon yet. But it is not all good news. Since my mother called me, she realized I did not know her work number, so after my father-in-law told her it was over, she called me repeatedly and harassed me about how I was ruining her life and that she would file for divorce on our behalf, and insisted you all were wrong about step-siblings being allowed to marry until I finally figured out how to block that number. She also borrowed someone else's phone and called me on that, so I blocked that number too. She has not tried any other phones yet, but I expect she will until I change my number again. My father-in-law is also sad over all this. He said leaving her was the smart thing to do and for the best, but he's having a hard time coping. I don't blame him, of course, but I know I would feel like crap if I was in the same situation. At least he did not have to see my mom at her worst. So, thank you all for all of your advice. My wife and I are very happy about starting a family next year after we get married in our church. I'm glad I did not rush into marriage like my mother. She got divorced and married another guy in the same year when I was 10 years old, and we feel we made the right call getting the marriage license out of the way now so she can start the name change process before the wedding. I've been compiling phone numbers to call since my wife is taking my last name, and I never realized just how much work this involves. Have a great rest of your Thanksgiving, guys. And I hope you enjoyed that sort of wholesome ending. And if you have watched until here, please feel free to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to help me out. This sort of help is very much appreciated and needed because lately the YouTube algorithm is just going crazy. Thank you so much. And the next one is titled, "Our neighbor told us he had killed 7 people. Roommate is freaking out and wants to move. What are our options here?" Alright, I will try and lay this out simply. Thanks in advance for advice. I moved into an apartment with one of my friends. For personal reasons we had to move quickly, and we found what looked like a nice place for about $650 a month. $325 split between the two of us, not including the cost of utilities. As far as housing costs go in our area, this is pretty cheap, and we were happy to be able to find something. It was not in a bad location and the building itself is sound, but we maybe were not as thorough about getting to know the other tenants as we should have been. Roommate had been getting along with our downstairs neighbor, was talking with him on Sunday after church. He asked her how the services went, she asked him if he went to any of the local parishes, he expressed sadness about some terrible events in his past and how he felt like he could have never set foot in a house of God again. Roommate, thinking that this was run-of-the-mill anguish about some kind of accident or mundane past transgression, tried to assure him that forgiveness was for everyone, all that jazz. He responded not for him that he had killed at least 7 people, maybe more, and done other terrible, not elaborated upon things, implied sexual assault. Roomie nods politely, tells him she's very sorry to hear that and quickly excuses herself from the conversation. Calls me 5 minutes later, absolutely losing her shit over the phone. I rush home and sit with her through probably the biggest panic attack I've ever seen. I considered calling an ambulance for her several times, but after about 10 minutes she could function again. I asked once she had calmed down if she thought he could have been joking with her. She thought seriously about it and said no. He had seemed genuinely upset when he said it and not sarcastic or deadpan. Our next door neighbor, let's call him Mike, comes over shortly after asking if everything was okay. We tell him what happens and he tells us that our downstairs neighbor had told him the same thing in largely the same context. Mike had actually called the police about it last year, but he said they came and ran his license, and when that did not produce any outstanding warrants, they left. So at this point, our downstairs neighbor is either terrible at jokes, mentally ill, or a serial killer. Roommate is not having any of this, she wants to move. I know we have no legal grounds to break the lease, so we would be paying double rent until the landlord re-rents the apartment to someone else. I could feasibly afford this, roommate cannot. I offered to stay here and absorb full cost of rent while she looks for other housing. I'm still leaning on bad at jokes as an explanation for all this, but then again I was not there when he said it. However, she is panicky, and after this the idea of trying to room with a stranger sends her stress through the roof just about as badly as living here does. We are about 4 months in on a year-long lease. Honestly, I'm not really comfortable living here after this, but I'm more okay with toughing it out until the lease is up and then moving. Unfortunately, this is a mental health issue for Rumi as she struggles with PTSD, and I think this apartment would be literally unlivable for her now. Even if he's not actually a murderer, schizophrenia or behavior that resembles schizophrenia is one of her major triggers. Is this something we can bring up with our landlord? Is there any kind of leniency we could ask for with regards to breaking the lease? Would finding potential new tenants before we move out be a possible solution so that at most we only owe maybe 2 months rent instead of 8? Would it be worth it to make another police report just so they know he's been saying this to more than one person, or would that be a waste of everyone's time? And guys, please let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation. Would you call the police again, or would you just tough it through like OP said? A user in the comments suggested this: if I were your landlord, I would tell you to just not talk to that neighbor anymore and not to bother me over such stupid things. You can ask for leniency for breaking the lease, but not liking a neighbor who has not caused you any harm is not really grounds for a landlord to do so. Finding new tenants could lower the amount of penalty you have to pay, but that depends entirely on the wording of your lease. Why bother the police? He has not committed a crime that you are capable of proving and would be wasting their time. And guys, I gotta say, I'm not sure if I can agree with this comment. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. And now we will read the update to the crazy neighbor story. Alright, so things got absolutely crazy and I could not update. So here is how it shook out. We went to our landlord asking if there was another unit available for use to move into in the same complex, because we were having some difficulties with our downstairs neighbor. After reading over the lease, requesting a room or building change is allowed for just about any reason as long as there is space available. We might have wound up with slightly higher rent, but not so much higher that it would have caused financial problems. Landlord is confused, says the apartment below us is being rented by a woman, not a man. We come to find out she's actually been letting him stay there against the terms of her lease. He was her boyfriend or something. Not entirely sure what happened next, but I'm assuming landlord went and had words with her because he vanishes for 2 weeks. Yay! Come back home a couple days ago, find police cars and an ambulance in front of our building. Turns out he came back and tried to strangle her, one of her kids called 911 and the police managed to get him off of her. She returns the next day, I bring her a casserole, I don't know, it seemed neighborly, and apologize because honestly had no idea it was going to snowball like this. She tells me not to worry, he was always kind of an abusive ass and he's definitely looking at jail time. Apparently, upon doing a more thorough background check, the police discovered he's been using someone else's stolen identity. And 3 guesses what kind of warrant they found when they ran the right information. Her understanding it was drug-related crime, so not like deliberate serial murder, but more like things turning ugly in a room full of people. Either way, I'm glad he's not coming back. Rumi is high-strung, but I'm optimistic that things will settle back down and she will be able to breathe properly in about a month. I spent all night last night trying to find a news article to link to, but either my Google Foo is weak or this somehow managed to slip under the radar of the local press, which is a shame because I wanted to prove this happened, if only because this is going to be such a wild story to tell at parties. And guys, I'm curious, did you ever have a neighbor that was comparable to this one? Maybe not a serial killer, but just slightly crazy? Let us know in the comments. And the next one is titled, My teenage daughter was sexually assaulted while visiting her father for the summer. Hi everyone, thank you in advance for any help you can provide. My ex and I divorced 10 years ago, we have a 14-year-old daughter and joint custody, though she spends the school year in SoCal, Southern California I guess, with me, and the summer in Maine with her father. Our divorce was not amicable, but I do everything in my power to keep it from affecting our daughter and have not told her about my reasons for wanting a divorce out of an interest of not poisoning her relationship with her father. She arrived home this morning and she looked pale and was shaking and in tears. After asking her what was wrong, she handed me a letter from my ex's mother. Apparently my daughter was acting like a slut and dressing inappropriately in front of her cousins, and her 19-year-old cousin sexually assaulted her. The letter was telling me how I am supposed to change how I am raising my daughter to prevent promiscuity. She has always been a crazy Bible-thumping weirdo, so I ignored it. I took my daughter home and immediately called my ex, asking him to send me the forms so that I can have copies of her medical records from being sent to the hospital, sent to her doctor, and ask for the name and number of whichever police officer is handling her case. He informed me that he decided not to press charges because our daughter was being a slut and she needs to know she's not going to be rewarded with attention for that kind of behavior. I am livid. It has been 4 weeks since the event happened and they did not permit her to call me that whole time. I wish I had given her the cell phone I had waiting at home before she left, but I had intended it as a "you are starting high school" gift and thought it would be best to wait. I want to press charges and see the aggressor punished to the fullest extent of the law. I would also like to see about amending our custody agreement so that she does not ever have to go see that effed up side of her family again. I am so angry right now, I cannot think straight and she's taking a nap. What do I need to do? Who do I need to call? And a user in the comments said, absolutely call the police. I would also talk to a lawyer and look at getting custody taken away as soon as possible. Also, save that letter, it will be important for both cases. I gotta be honest guys, that is certainly one of the most infuriating stories we have read in a long time. Let me know in the comments how would you handle that situation. And now we will read the update to the teenage daughter's story. Well, it has been a busy day and it is barely 8:30. Christ. Yesterday afternoon, after I made my post, which admittedly helped calm my rage, just posting it, I called her gynecologist. I have uterine issues, so I got her a gyno to get checked for them once she started her period. She was very understanding and offered to stay late if I wanted to bring my daughter in that evening. So I called the police, let them know I was taking her to an appointment at her gyno that evening as well, so we could coordinate. My daughter was a bit hesitant to go see the doctor, but understood when I explained that we needed to make sure she was not pregnant and did not have any damage that went uncared for because her father refused to get her medical attention. The doctor said she's physically fine, pending the results of the STI tests, and she asked to be put on birth control for peace of mind. Though I know this is traumatic for her and her father's family is a bunch of goddamn nutjobs, I'm glad they did not get into her head enough that she would be afraid to ask for that kind of protection. After the doctor's appointment, we went home and ordered pizza, and a detective arrived around 8 PM. He sat down with my daughter in our living room while I hung out in my office after making sure she was okay being alone with him. Didn't want her to not tell him something for fear I would hear it. The detective told me before he left that this is a serious matter and he would be contacting me with information about anyone in Maine I needed to speak to. I made a few copies of the letter and scanned it in, then gave him the original and emailed him a digital copy. He left a big folder with a bunch of victim advocacy groups information in it. He also told me to get a restraining order for her against her father's family. After he left, we sat down and set up her new cell phone and she went on Facebook and blocked her father's family as they had started posting victim blaming bullcrap to her wall. Within an hour, my phone was ringing with my ex demanding that I make our daughter unblock him since apparently he has decided he has a right to be on her Facebook. I told him to only contact me through my attorney and hung up. This morning I got a call back from my attorney even though he is on vacation. His assistant heard my message and contacted him about it since it seemed more pressing than most other matters, and he called me to reassure me that he will handle it, and since we divorced in CA, the custody arrangement is in CA and it will be amended in CA since CA is her state of residency and in CA they take a real-time view of this kind of stuff. He also told me at 14, no judge he knows of would tell her she had to go visit her father, much less in this situation. I have an appointment for her with a trauma counselor. The detective recommended this afternoon and took the day off work so that I could help her as needed. Right now, she's mostly been playing World of Warcraft and eating junk food, but I feel like at least right now, I'm not going to tell her when she needs to go to bed or police her health choices. I want to thank you all for your excellent advice and support. I will do my best to keep you updated as the situation unfolds, but my conversation with the detective and my attorney leads me to believe that while the custody amendment will not take too long, the criminal proceedings may take longer as they are complicated by the fact the victim lives in one state and the crime occurred in a different state. And now we will read the final update to the teenage daughter story. Thought I would post a quick update. My attorney spoke with my ex-husband's attorney and I don't know what words were exchanged, but my ex agreed to the amended custody agreement, so she no longer has to see him. He made a big stink about how he is not paying child support anymore, but I'm not very worried about it. I make enough that it is not really a concern, and I've lurked this sub enough to know that just because he does not have visitation does not mean he gets out of paying child support. I am a vindicative bitch, so if he is late on a single payment, I plan to pursue it as far as I can. As far as the guy that assaulted my daughter, I know very little other than it is an ongoing investigation, but that they will contact me when more information is available. I'm pretty sure he's been arrested, as I received a lovely email from my ex-mother-in-law rambling about how I am destroying her grandson's life, blah blah blah. I really don't care, I've blocked her and my daughter has all of them blocked, so as far as I am concerned they can die in a fire at the bottom of a well. My daughter is doing well, she has joined a LARP group, sorry I don't know what it is, they play something like Dungeons and Dragons but in costumes with fake weapons and seems to be bouncing back well. Not having to deal with her father or his family anymore seems to have lifted a weight off her shoulders. She's seeing a therapist regularly though, as I know from my own bouts of depression that just because you seem fine does not mean you are. I wanted to extend my thanks to everyone in this sub for how supportive and kind you have been through what is a very difficult time for my family. It was very helpful to have people able to calmly and clearly explain what my options were and what to expect when I was too angry to think straight. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's content, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join our amazing community. Furthermore, don't forget to go to r/ripestories on Reddit to post your own stories if you want me to read them out in a video. I hope you have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow.